Welcome to the Alabama CPA podcast. This is your prodigal host, Rob Pearson. We've been missing on the podcast for the last several months, but glad to finally be back. And what a time to be back. We are currently in Puerto Rico at the NASBA Eastern Regional Conference for NASBA's all the things going on in the wonderful world of the state boards all around the country. And we've got two of the best with us, our executive director of our Alabama State Board of Public Accountancy, Boyd Busby, and the chairman of the State Board of Public Accountancy, Steve Smith, is here with us. And guys, it's a pleasure to be able to join you in a really, really nice place. Boyd, I'll start with you. Not sure how we got this gig to be able to go to Puerto Rico to learn more about what's going on in state boards, but they picked a good one.
Yeah, they absolutely did. The space is nice, the weather's been great, and it's been well attended.
Yeah, but I don't know if we'll be able to put the AI-generated Puerto Rico song out, but there is something about they really do clap when you land the plane in San Juan.
Yeah, I thought that was an old thing they did years ago. We landed here and they clapped. I've been an empty nester since 46, so whatever's happening currently in the world in pop culture, I don't know. But I found out later that there is a song about clapping when you land in Puerto Rico.
Indeed, it is. As I've been told, Megan Hughes in our office told me about it before we left, and apparently the locals do that. I've been told that they've been doing it for years, that when they land in San Juan, they clap, their people on the plane clap, and that's what happened when we showed up. But a lot to clap about. We're just at the end of the conference, so you guys, I'm kind of standing between y'all and getting back and relaxing a little bit before you probably leave tomorrow. And so wanted to kind of get your sense of both where we are as a state board and sort of what we learned today and yesterday during this conference. And Boyd, I'll start with you because you led an interesting topic on private equity and so how that's going to impact state boards around the country and because I know you've been a leader in that space. You want to talk about a little bit about what you were able to talk about and share with the group yesterday?
Yeah, so I've led that with Steve Plateau, he's on the Florida board and he's also on the Peak. And he's also serves on the private equity task force for NASBA, which I serve as well. This section of the program started because of a white paper that the private equity task force has been working on for several months, trying just to give boards information on what an APS structure is with private equity investment. Think about the risks, how your board is structured as far as their statutes and rules and what you can do to monitor compliance with things such as firm ownership, independence, and those types of things that are under our purview. And a lot of the program was focused on response to the Peak exposure draft. And as Peak works through those comments to the exposure draft, and there's a lot of comments about that. And Steve can give a lot better information. He's been following it much closer on the Peak because now he is a member of the Peak.
Well, why don't we'll pass it to you then, Steve Smith, the chairman of our board. First of all, tell you because Boyd is bad about giving acronyms and not telling you what they mean, because I know APS is Alternative Practice Structure. Peak is
the Professional Ethics Executive Committee for the AICPA. Mm-hmm. And before I even get into what the exposure draft was about, I'll just say Steve Plateau and Boyd did a great job on the presentation. Boyd may act like he's not saying that attuned to the details, but he's gotten a lot of talk and response in the last day since that panel discussion of what a good presentation they did, and I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. It is going to be interesting, as Boyd said. I just was appointed to Peak. I attended the first meeting in May, and it was the first meeting after practitioners have had an opportunity to respond to the exposure draft. And I think they got more comments for this exposure draft than just about any exposure draft they've had in a while. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes from here, and I'm saying it's going to be interesting to see. The state board wrote a comment letter. Now I'll be on the other side of that, going into meetings, and our next meeting on the exposure draft is in August, and then there's potentially a follow-up meeting in November. But just this whole concept of having alternative practice structures with private equity investment creates a lot of independence questions that are making a lot of people be a little uncomfortable about exactly where it goes and how far in a test firm in an alternative practice structure with private equity, who can they do a test work for? It's just going to be interesting to see how this develops. I think a lot of people, when they put on the regulator hat, would like to make the rules a little more restrictive, but again, APS is here. It's not going anywhere. We've got to deal it and address it and come out with some workable solutions, to allow boards around the country to enforce the rules once we decide what they will be.
You bring up an interesting point. Our Alabama board has been very active in NASBA in volunteering. I mean, you're volunteering on these different committees, and now you're volunteering to be on peak, and you mentioned the number of times they're going to meet and take up really weighty issues like the emerging issue with APS and private equity and other things that are on our plate as a profession. Is that... And I'm going to ask you now, as board chairman, is that something that on the Alabama State Board of Public Accountancy, I think there's an encouragement to sort of become involved in national issues because it keeps everyone on our board sort of thinking on the forefront. I think that's been why our board has been on the leadership and forefront of a lot of issues going around the country, including the pathways discussions and those things. There are other. I'll just say this: I've got a new friend that you meet at these things, and he's from a different state, and I won't call the name of the state, but he's the only person from the board that came to this event. And I don't think that's good. I think it's good that our board is so active. Is that something that y'all really take a lot of pride in as a board and pass it down to new board members and that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. And that may come from Boyd's leadership as executive director, but I'm in my fourth year on the board. Once you've served on the board for 1 year, you can volunteer for NASBA committees, and we just encourage everyone to try to get involved in some kind of committee with NASBA. So I've been involved with the ethics committee since my second year. As I said, I'm in my fourth. I've actually recently been reappointed and confirmed to serve another term, so I'll be going another 4 years.
That's right.
But yes, everybody on our board usually volunteers for committees. Every one of our board members comes to the NASBA meetings, the regionals and the annuals, which is pretty unusual. I mean, most states, some have full representation, but a lot only send 2 or 3 people, or at least that's what I've seen, Boyd. I don't know what you're...
I think we missed one, and he had something else he had to do this week that was on our board. But to me, just as a practitioner in the CPA field, it gives me a lot of comfort in my board knowing that they are that engaged as subject matter experts on CPA issues going on around the country and apply them to the state of Alabama.
Yeah, we have been very fortunate. I know my 11 years at the board, we've almost had 100% participation at every regional and annual meeting, and almost every year we had every member serve on at least one committee. Now, we've had a few members that were so overcommitted that they had to drop off of one as one became too taxing. And this is all, again, Rob, this is completely volunteer. And our board believes in protection of the public and the profession, and they're willing to spend the extra time. Alabama should be very proud of their board and how involved they are.
Yeah, that's my point, because I'm like you. An engaged board is a better board, and you've got, heck, they're so engaged that you've got a former member of the board here serving on and to help put this event on, and WIM. So I think it's outstanding. Thank you for your leadership and doing what you're doing, Steve. Where there, and we've already sort of mentioned the private equity side. I'll just ask a general question for you. We got through the pathways bill this past year. We know that Alabama offers mobility for people to come in and out, work in the state, and so I've always been sort of progressive on that front. As a result of what you've heard in the last couple of days, do you see is there a possibility for any additional changes, either in the short term or in the long term, or the things that you've heard in the last 2 days that you think, maybe we ought to think about that?
Yeah, well, I'll mention
it's
one.
It's a tough question just to throw at you.
I'll mention one thing on the pathways bill. We've got the legislation passed, and that's effective. But the board has revised some rules that will go along with the pathway legislation, and those rules are really, if they move according to schedule, will be in effect October 1st of this year. So I just want to make sure everybody's out there looking for that and making sure they realize whether those rules have been published and they're effective. We had discussions on the CPA exam as part of the NASBA conference. Mm-hmm. I think whether I wanted to hear that or not, the speaker, I think, said the CPA exam could continue to evolve. Seems like we just changed it. So hopefully that doesn't happen anytime real soon. We had an interesting discussion about a particular process that's used in Puerto Rico and has been, I think, since 1978.
That was fascinating.
Where they basically issue a stamp related. Now it's an electronic stamp. It used to be a real physical stamp, but they issue a stamp for any kind of a test report. And
compilation, agreed upon procedures, audit, and it's numbered and it's logged.
Right, and
tied to that report.
And it may have been driven originally because in Puerto Rico, tax returns require audited financial statements to be attached to them. So I think the taxing authority had some driving force in getting it established, but it's got application maybe to other situations where down the road with AI and other technology advances, maybe the possibility of fraud and financial statements and other test work may be greater, and there may be an opportunity to use this. Now, the question is if under today's regulatory environment, what states would be willing to put another layer of regulation. But if it's something that could protect the public accounting firms and there's buy-in from the firms and they're almost demanding it instead of the board, instituting something, maybe that's something that can come about and be a good thing. I don't know what you think about that, Boyd. But
yeah, absolutely. It is a fascinating product, and I was fortunate enough this morning to sit in on a roundtable discussion with just the executive directors, and we talked about the stamp that Puerto Rico uses. And what I found interesting was some of the executive directors have multiple boards, engineering, architecture, and they were fascinated because they saw how this could be used not just for accountancy, but also to validate plans from engineers and architects. And they thought it was wonderful. I think they see a lot more fraud in those areas than in financials. But Steve, you're right. This is not only a public protection issue, but with the advancements in AI and how easy it is to create a set of financials with pick a firm and put on your report, it could also protect firms from fraud down the road.
Yep. Boyd, anything stand out to you other than maybe the stamp that you think could make its way to Alabama?
Yeah, so the UAA has several, I'll stop and I just won't do the acronym, the Uniform Accountancy Act.
Thank you, Boyd.
Yeah. So Uniform Accountancy Act is a joint document between the AICPA and NASBA, and it's really a guide for state boards. It's not something that we're required, but if it gets through the UAA, most of the boards have looked at it and agreed on it, and most states try to implement it in some way. So they're looking at 2 or 3 issues right now. New definition of a test, the use of title, which I'll have to say Alabama, again, was on the forefront with use of title, and some of our language might even be the model in the UAA for all states. So we can be very proud of that. And also ESOPs, they're becoming more prevalent, and the UAA might even look at ESOP ownership and putting it somewhere in the UAA. Another fascinating topic, and it's a complicated topic, that say it at some point CPE standards are going to change, and there is a bunch of people on a committee working through, and they're working with external professional groups to monitor other professions and rethink CPE as we know it. And I think it's worthwhile. How long that will take, I'm not sure, but that is a discussion that's happening right now.
Thank you for that. Again, you guys are awesome. Maybe we can convene this weekend and next week in Omaha and talk about more. Since Boyd's a big Troy guy, Stevie, you and I are Bama fans, so that works out pretty well for us.
Maybe they can meet in the finals.
I guess I kind of hope not, but yeah, but I guess so. That'd be awesome. But look, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service, Steve, to do this again, volunteer work, to be as active as you are, both in the side of the state, and then engaging and learning and finding out what the hot topics are and applying them back in our state. And we're just very well led by your board and our executive director, Boyd
Well,
Busby.
thank you.
So thank you.
I've enjoyed the service on the board, and I've enjoyed working with Boyd and the other members of the board that I've served with.
Well, next week is the annual meeting. It's next Tuesday at the club. We hope you'll come eat an orange roll with us, and we'll have a lot of good CPE and a lot of good speakers. As a matter of fact, this year, for the first time ever, I'll make my appearance as a speaker. Janine has limited me to 30 seconds of an answer per question, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. But she and I will. She's already given me a sign that says, "Shut up, Rob. It's time. Time to move on." So
good luck, Janine.
Yeah, right. So again, thank y'all for joining us. We're going to try to we're going to restart the podcast, and this is going to be the one that sort of restarts it. So thank you again for joining us. You've been listening to Alabama CPA Podcast.